Every single morning across America, millions of retirees wake up with absolutely nowhere to go. They have no one waiting for them, and increasingly, they've got no reason to feel needed. Now, the country promised them this ultimate freedom after decades of hard work. But for so many Americans, retirement has quietly become one of the loneliest, most psychologically devastating phases of life. And the crazy part? Almost nobody is talking about it. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really heavy, complex, yet incredibly urgent topic that is actively affecting millions of families right now. They spent their entire lives preparing financially for retirement, but never psychologically. I really want you to let that sink in for a second. It just completely shatters this illusion of the American dream we've all been sold, doesn't it? For generations, we've been told the same story. Work hard, save your money, raise a family, and finally, you get to just relax. But as we're about to uncover, simply having money in the bank does not protect a human being from profound emotional abandonment. So let's look at the hidden retirement crisis, the expectation versus the reality. And this brilliantly illustrates the jarring disconnect. It's kind of like a giant iceberg, right? Society enthusiastically sells us the very tip of the iceberg, that sunny final reward of a life well lived. We're totally conditioned to expect this commercialized fantasy of endless golf courses, cruise ships, and beautiful beachfronts. But, well, unless your greatest ambition in life is just lowering your golf handicap, the hidden reality often hits incredibly hard. We're talking depression, cognitive declines, severe anxiety, and deep emotional isolation. The stark contrast between the promise we're sold and the emotional collapse older adults actually experience is staggering. And because they made it, retirees are expected to just smile and appear grateful, leaving them to suffer these realities in complete silence. Now, here's the thing that absolutely blew my mind. This isn't just a mental health crisis. It is literally a physical health crisis. According to organizations like the CDC and the National Institute on Aging, the chronic loneliness older adults experience significantly increases their risk of dementia and heart disease. I mean, the isolation physically changes the brain and the body. In fact, the physical toll of this isolation raises mortality risk to a level comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day or severe obesity. So we're not just talking about feeling a bit sad. This is literally a matter of life and death. Okay, let's dive into this. Identity, work, and community, uncovering the root causes. To really grasp why this is happening, we have to unpack 5 systemic root causes that are driving this epidemic: work identity, community collapse, the loneliness epidemic, economic fear, and tech substitution. Because here is the honest truth. This psychological collapse isn't happening because these individuals are weak or because they somehow failed at retirement. No, it is the result of a systemic societal collapse. We're going to walk through each of these to see exactly how the very structure of modern American life is quietly dismantling the emotional foundations human beings actually need to survive. So, starting right at the top, our modern American identity. You know, in a lot of cultures, identity is deeply rooted in family or community or tradition. But in America, self-worth is heavily tied to productivity. It's all built entirely around that one single question you hear at every party: what do you do? For decades, millions of Americans sacrificed their health and their relationships for their careers. Then, one random Tuesday, the routine just stops. The emails stop. The human brain circles so deeply with this sudden lack of purpose. After decades of corporate conditioning, when retirement suddenly strips away your daily purpose, it triggers a terrifying existential crisis. The second structural cause is the complete collapse of community. Honestly, our modern environment actively works against us. Suburbs were designed for cars, for consumption, for privacy. They were not built for human connection. I mean, think about it. Neighborhoods have become completely fragmented. Kids move all the way across the country for jobs. Genuine, face-to-face interactions have just collapsed. So unlike previous generations, modern retirees are aging inside these isolated, fractured social systems that offer basically zero infrastructure for emotional survival. Which brings us to economics and the digital divide, the modern pressures. Moving down into the next layer of that iceberg, when the daily stress of a career vanishes, it doesn't just leave peace and quiet behind. It's almost instantly replaced by intense modern pressures. We're talking skyrocketing healthcare and prescription costs, crushing inflation and housing rates, and the terrifying fragility of retirement savings. So many retirees live in constant fear of becoming a burden on their families or actually delay necessary medical care because they simply can't afford it. All of this is fueled by one constant, terrifying question repeating in their heads. What if I run out of money before I run out of life? This pressure creates just a constant baseline of chronic anxiety. Now, what's really interesting about this is that technology delivered substitution instead of connection. We were all promised it was going to bring us closer together, right? But for a lot of retirees, it did the exact opposite. Younger generations increasingly communicate almost exclusively through screens. And that leaves older Americans, who are often pretty unfamiliar with this rapidly evolving tech, feeling totally alienated, humiliated, and just entirely shut out of modern social life. Because, let's be honest, algorithms are designed to maximize your attention, not to offer any sort of emotional healing. Social media just creates this really hollow illusion of companionship. A retiree might sit in a completely empty house and scroll for hours and hours every single day, yet still feel profoundly alone. America modernized at an absolute breakneck pace, and frankly, it modernized much faster than millions of older adults could emotionally adapt to. So what does this actually look like? Let's look at the human toll, 3 faces of the crisis. Because these abstract concepts, they happen to real breathing people. Take the provider, for example, a 72-year-old retired truck driver who worked hard his entire life, paid his taxes, raised a family, and never complained once. But after his wife passed away and his kids moved off, his days became filled with this endless, repetitive silence. Eventually, his depression turned into alcoholism. Now, this wasn't a lack of character, and it wasn't laziness. It was the brutal, completely predictable result of a human being subjected to prolonged, agonizing emotional isolation. Next up, we have the successful executive. Think about a woman who spent 35 years building status, wealth, and a serious reputation. But the minute she retired, she was hit with debilitating panic attacks. Without the meetings, without the deadlines, and without the constant recognition, she literally no longer knew who she was. Her immense career success had just been masking a really deep emotional dependency on productivity, and retirement exposed that dependency in a brutal way. And third, there's the invisible widow. She's got kids who absolutely love her, but they live thousands of miles away, so their interactions are pretty much reduced to superficial, quick little text messages. So what does she do? She leaves the television on at night while she sleeps. Not because she's watching it, but literally just for the feeling that someone else is in the room with her. It's a heartbreaking reality of geographic separation, where this sort of digital substitution has completely failed to replace genuine, warm human presence. But you know, this whole thing, it absolutely does not stay contained just to the retirees. There is a massive intergenerational toll here. Adult children suddenly become caretakers while simultaneously trying to balance their own demanding jobs and parenting their own kids. They're facing their own economic pressures, massive digital overstimulation, and this really deep cultural guilt for not spending enough time with their aging parents. This silent mental health breakdown of the elderly bleeds directly into the lives of working-age caretakers, financially and emotionally exhausting entire families. Because a society that completely isolates its elderly is teaching younger generations a genuinely terrifying lesson. One day, this will happen to you too. If this crisis continues unchecked, we aren't just losing the wisdom and the historical memory of our elders, we are cementing a super dark trajectory for our hyper-individualistic society. The loneliness and the isolation facing retirees right now, it's basically just a preview of the exact future that younger, equally lonely generations are walking toward right this second. Let's move to and see how this builds into rebuilding purpose and connection, the path forward. Now, despite the heavy reality we just uncovered, this explainer is fundamentally about awareness. And awareness, that gives us the power to change things. The systems and the priorities that are causing all this suffering are not permanent. They can be redesigned. There are 4 systematic, highly practical steps to fix this invisible collapse. Rebuild purpose, rebuild community, normalize mental health treatment by totally removing the stigma of seeking emotional support, and finally, relearn presence. Let's break down exactly what actionable, real-world steps look like for the first and the last points on that list. For step 1, we absolutely have to actively rebuild purpose. I mean, retirement shouldn't mean retiring from life itself, right? Retirees desperately need opportunities for meaningful contribution. Things like mentorship, taking on community leadership, joining intergenerational programs, and volunteering. Human beings physically and psychologically deteriorate when they feel like they aren't needed. Giving older adults a clear, needed role in society is literally the strongest protective shield we have for their mental health. In jumping to that last step, families have got to relearn presence. Listen, a lot of retirees aren't starving for money. They are literally starving for human connection. Real community acts like psychological medicine. It means taking immediate, real-world action today. Call your parents. Go visit your grandparents. Have actual, real conversations. True emotional support requires shared experiences and a physical presence that a screen simply cannot ever replicate. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. A civilization is ultimately judged not by how it treats the rich or the powerful, but by how it treats those who spent their entire lives building it. The greatest tragedy here isn't that millions of retirees are growing old. It's that so many are growing old, feeling completely, entirely forgotten. So I have to ask you, what kind of country do we become if we ignore it? If this explainer moves you today, please share it with someone who really needs to hear it. Because sometimes, honestly, just one single conversation can literally save a life. Subscribe to join the discussion, and let's start actually paying attention to the people who built the world we live in.